Hello, everyone. I'm Rachel Patton, Executive Director of Preserve Arkansas. Preserve Arkansas is the statewide nonprofit advocate for the preservation of Arkansas's historic places. Welcome to Women in Preservation. This series features Arkansas women who are working to save the state's historic places. Many thanks to our series sponsor, DMX Architecture of Fayetteville. You are all invited to attend Preserve Arkansas's annual membership meeting and more on October 29th and 30th at Camden. We'll start things off on the 29th at 5 p.m. with a reception on the grounds of the Ouachita County Historical Society, followed by a brief business meeting and haunted history tours of the McCollum Chittister House. On Saturday morning, Preserve Arkansas members are invited to a brunch at the Morgan Parker House in the Washington Street Historic District. These events are available free of charge to members of Preserve Arkansas. To learn more about these events or to join or renew your membership, go to our website at preservearkansas.org. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker. Laura Hendricks is a senior associate and senior interior designer at Polk Stanley Wilcox Architects. A 2006 graduate of UCA's interior design program, Laura has spent her career with the firm. Her portfolio includes corporate, education, healthcare, hospitality, civic, and religious institutions, ranging from new construction to renovation. She has a passion for creating spaces that have a positive effect on their occupants, working with the client to understand their needs and create solutions that increase efficiency and productivity. She enjoys connecting with people through the design of the interior space while enhancing the built environment at a personal level. Some of her most notable projects include the bank OZK headquarters, Robinson Center renovation and expansion, Arkansas School for Mathematics, Science, and the Arts, and the new offices of Polk Stanley Wilcox in the Winchester building in downtown Little Rock. In 2020, she was one of 20 nationally recognized winners of the American Society of Interior Designers Ones to Watch program and graduated from Leadership Greater Little Rock Class 35. Please welcome Laura Hendricks.
Thank you, Rachel. I appreciate that nice introduction. I'm going to share my screen and then we can get started. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself before we get into the renovation of Winchester. So I grew up on a farm in Lonsdale, Arkansas. It's between Hot Springs and Benton. We owned a home there and then leased a farm that was about a mile away. And that's really where my love for the design industry started. Sounds kind of funny to say that a farm inspired that, but it did. It made me aware of my surroundings and how changes to that can affect efficiency with our farm, with our animals. We would bale hay and store it in a barn, and I would, once we got the hay bales in there, I would rearrange all of them to create a floor plan, and that's what my sisters and I would play in. That probably annoyed my dad quite a bit that I would do that constantly, but that's kind of how I started to first be aware that your built surroundings can affect everything that you do. So that's really where design, a passion for design started for me. I was always involved with art throughout elementary school and always loved that. And that continued into high school, where I took a drafting an engineering class. That was the two classes that were hosted at my high school, and that kind of just furthered my interest into architecture and design. At that point, I thought I would want to do architecture. I don't know that I knew what interior design was at that point, but throughout high school, or at the end of high school, started applying for scholarships and ended up getting a full ride to UCA, and that just ended up being the smart decision for me financially. And so went to UCA and took a couple of design classes just to keep my foot in that area, that area of creativity. And then once I took a couple of classes, I realized, oh, this is what I like, not architecture. I like the personal connection, kind of at arm's length, that design offered. And so that, so I stuck with UCA. I didn't move after that. And I did my internship with Wilcox Group. I was fortunate enough to do an internship for the last 6 months, the last semester of my college career. And then they hired me before graduation. And I've been there ever since. So 16 years later and still there. Polk Stanley and Wilcox Group merged about 10 years ago, but have been there my entire career. So, and then just a little bit personally for me, I married my husband, Kyle, 2 years ago, just a few months before COVID. And then here are our pups, Griffey on the left, and our new little puppy, Finley, that we just got about a month ago. So just a little bit about me personally, kind of so that you can know my background, and then a little bit about me professionally. So like I said, I've been at Polk Stanley Wilcox for 16 years. It's really given me an opportunity to work on a lot of different project types, from new construction to renovation, all sized projects, all budget sized projects. These are a few that I've done. Riggs headquarters up on the left. App2G is an app company that we just completed about a year ago. ASMSA dorm and library was a great project. UCA Donaghy, I was really proud to do a project back at my alma mater. Bank OZK here in the center. Robinson Center was such a learning curve, and just packed so much knowledge into that few years of working on that project. Purple Cow in North Little Rock is just such a fun client and super fun space. Weyerhaeuser in Hot Springs. This is a timber company that their regional headquarters is in Hot Springs, and that was just a really fun project to another renovation project that kind of adaptive reuse that we did for them there. And then Fellowship Bible Church. Those are some of the projects that just kind of stick out in my mind to span my career. So so getting into Winchester renovation, designing an office space for your coworkers is kind of interesting. We have 30 plus designers, between architects and designers, in our Little Rock office. And there are 30 opinions on ways that things need to be done or improved. And so our partnerships realized that we really needed to have a dedicated team that were tasked to get this project designed and built in time and on budget. And so there were about 4 or 5 of us that were designated on that team. But we were able to open up work sessions to the entire office. We had one brainstorming session where everybody, brought in their own ideas and threw out just either design elements or ways that we could improve efficiency and productivity within the office. If that's just a standing height table for meetings. Some items were as simple as that, and then others were pretty elaborate. But it was nice that the entire staff got to have their say, got to contribute to the design in that way. Of course, the design team then had to go back and assimilate that information down and really get to the core of what all the asks were for. So anyway, and then I also thought it would be helpful for you to see the space that we came from. So we were in the Riverdale area before this. We ended up occupying the entire first floor of the Cottondale building on Cottondale down there. Whenever Wilcox Group first moved into this space, we only occupied this left side. And then they grew and expanded and took over this center section here in the middle. And that's where they were whenever I started back in 2006. And then once we merged with Polk Stanley and we're Polk Stanley Wilcox, we busted through this wall and then took over this space here on the right, completing the entire floor. So we were really in 3 separate studios, with very little interaction between the 3 studios. I worked in this center section here, and I would go a week or 2 without talking to some people in this studio on the left, or vice versa for the studio on the right. So it separated our design teams that were not sectioned off by projects. So we work with everybody in the office on different projects. And so it just felt like it separated our culture. It separated our employees. It didn't encourage collaboration as much as what our work style does. And so that was one thing that was really important to us in this new building, was for us to be in one studio so that we could, collaborate just at an arm's length away. That was probably one of the most important things to our employees at that time. Also, another big ask was exposure to daylight and views. Most of our staff sat with their backs to the light. So we didn't have too many windows on this south, planned south view. We did have a beautiful view of the river on the planned north. But as you can see, we located our conference space against that. And so our staff had to look through another room to even see if it was raining outside. And so that was another big ask of our staff. So as I mentioned before, we were down in Riverdale area, not as walkable of a area as downtown. That was another want from our employees, to be able to walk to lunch, and just we have a younger staff too, and I think that was a big factor in that we just wanted more walkability. And so I think because of that really kind of told us that we wanted to be in downtown. Our partners narrowed it down, went on the search for buildings and narrowed it down to 2 sites. One off of Broadway, a little bit closer to the financial quarter, and then our building, Winchester building, on Spring and 8th. And I think they were kind of split on which one would be better for our office. And so we did an office tour of both spaces. And it was unanimous that the Winchester building is where our staff wanted to be. We did not have one vote for the other space. It was more square footage than what Winchester was, but Winchester was still plenty of square footage for what we needed it to be. So it was a good fit in that way. So this building was built in 1947, and it was previously a residential area that turned to a more commercial auto center of downtown. So originally built in 1947 by Dennis and Maud Winchester. It was the Winchester Auto Store. And it really has, the classic features of the Art Moderne style. And that is what we what met our eligibility with the National Register to get the building on that register, because it was a rare example of that architectural style. So by the early 1950s, around this area, there were 6 filling stations, 7 used auto sales lots, 5 auto sales and service garages, an auto body shop, an auto storage area, and an auto parking lot. So really kind of an auto hub, part of downtown. So it remained in the Winchester family until 2016, and it really had very few alterations in that span. It's rumored to have been used by the Arkansas Opera Theater for storage or even some rehearsals in the 1980s. Let's see, it was later renamed to Quality Auto Parts in 1978. So really kind of stayed within that program type for much of its life. So whenever we bought it in 2017, it kind of was this building frozen in time. It was definitely worn, but it a lot of its original characteristics that you would want to see in this kind of building were maintained and in pretty decent shape too. So in order to get it on the register, we did have to, so this bottom picture on the left is the before picture of how we purchased it. We did have to replace this glazing down below in order to get it on the register, because it wouldn't be recognized as that style or what it was originally. So we had to spend money to get that replaced even before we could get turn in our submission. And that took about a year to get it on the register. And then we were able to start construction and planning. So this is the north exterior. We completely restored the glazing there. We replaced the storefront windows. The steel framed windows up high were refinished and reglazed. We maintained the glass block at several locations around the north and the west side of the building. Here's another view at that corner shot. So this corner was actually the main entry for the auto parts store, but in planning it didn't really make sense for that to be our front door. As I mentioned, our studios were broken up before, and this space was ideal for our new studio, but we couldn't have people coming in within our studio. We needed a little bit more separation between our entry door and our studio. So we located the door over on the west side. This door was existing, and so we were able to put our new entry door there in that existing location. The garage door is existing. We did have to we refinished that. We weren't able to replace it but we refurbished it really nicely, and it is still operable to this day. So we are planning to put a bigger sign out here, but that's still in the works. So the building has 5 structural bays. The auto parts showroom was this entire or this space, these first 2 bays here. That was two height space, 2-story height space. These 2 bays here are underneath the mezzanine that you can see. This gray fill is the outline of the mezzanine. And then this garage here, this is where that garage door is. They would pull trucks or cars in here and would do minor maintenance, tire replacement, that kind of thing in this garage. So this floor slopes down into this garage, and this is the existing floor plan. So you can see there was very little built walls in this space, which really made demo a breeze for us. So kind of had a blank palette to work with there. So this is our new floor plan. So we organized it in that our studio is here on this bottom floor, north facing. We tucked some private offices and conference rooms, our break rooms, and our materials library underneath that mezzanine. And then kept the garage as really kind of this open multi-purpose space with our primary conference room off of that. On the second floor, we located more private offices and then a smaller studio up top. We have our marketing director and our IT director up here. But the studio, even the smaller studio here, is still open to this larger studio down below. And then we have some multi-purpose space here on the west and a secondary conference room here on the right. So this was the garage whenever we went and toured it as an office, whenever we were going to vote on which space we were going to get. So there's a lot of existing clay brick that we cleaned up and kind of let shine in the new space. The steel glazing on the left here, we also just cleaned that up, had to do very little to that. Fortunately, I think there were 2 panes of glass that were broken in the entire wall, which is really kind of impressive that we only had to replace 2. They had 3 skylights within this structural bay. So there's this one here that was existing, and we kept the glazing in that. We just cleaned it up again. There's another skylight in this darker bay that you can't really see, but we added a new skylight there with new glazing. And then back in this space beyond, you can see the sunlight coming through a smaller skylight down at the end. We removed the strip lighting that we had in here and cleaned up, as much as we could in there, but really tried to maintain as much of the character as we could. This is just a close-up view of that steel glazing that seeing it like this, it really kind of surprised me. It's just kind of stunning how well it cleaned up. So this is a shot of that garage. So as you can see, the 2 conference spaces down on the end, this is where that skylight was, that smaller skylight was that shined into that space beyond. The new skylight that we put in here, the hole was existing, but just replaced the skylight and glazing, and then the existing skylight here that we cleaned up that has not leaked one time. So that's impressive with the history and just time that's there, and it has not leaked. So this space, we still call it the garage. This photo was taken at our open house party that we had back in, I think, October of 2019. And it's really used as a multi-purpose space. We have, people come out and eat lunch in here. We have more informal meetings take place in here. We play bago and have staff meetings out here. At least before COVID, we did. We're still trying to get back to that. But it's really just meant to be this fun, interactive space. So we stacked 2 conference rooms. This mezzanine here was existing, and so we took advantage of that and tucked our 2 conference rooms on top of each other here. This bottom one is a little bit more formal, or maybe dressed up than what the one is up above. The one above actually has mobile tables in it so that we can use that as a multi-purpose space. We've done yoga in there, and so just kind of use it for what we need at the time. Tommy Farrell helped us create this conference table that we tied in some of the industrial elements of the space. So having exposed steel at the edge, and then kind of mixing that with the refined walnut of the table and of the ceiling here. So then just directly adjacent to the garage was this existing steel stair and a dumbwaiter lift here. We tried to reuse this stair, but it really just didn't work with what we needed the space to be. So we did rebuild a steel stair here that leads up to the mezzanine. We did keep the lift. We did move it to work with our new floor plan, but you can see that just behind the reception desk here, just behind the fuchsia signage there. There's a better shot of it. So it is still usable. It just takes a really long time to crank that sucker up to the mezzanine level. We tried to do it whenever we moved in, but it just took too long. But it is a really neat feature, and I think adds a nice tie back to the history of the building. So it definitely is always a conversation piece for sure. And then this is a view from our break room into our garage. So in planning, space planning, the building, because our old space didn't have daylight in every room, and that was such a desire from the employees, we really tried to orient all of the walls to run in the north-south direction so that you could see from the garage into the studio and see that entire north bank of windows. And so we really tried to maintain that as much as we could. This is stepping west and looking back into the garage here. The office has provided bikes that we can take to, go to local restaurants or run up to Starbucks if we'd like. But really, all the walls, all solid walls, are run in that north-south direction, and really trying to keep that daylight passing through as much as we can. There are very few walls that run east and west. And so then this is stepping back a little bit further and looking from our studio, looking back to the mezzanine and then through to the garage. So you can really kind of see that visibility that we have throughout the space. one thing that was really worked to our benefit was the exposed structure that was throughout the building. That's really what we would have chosen if we weren't doing a historic building, but that was something that the preservation group wanted us to maintain, and it was just nice that that was something that we would have chosen originally. You'll notice here these penetrations in the slabs, these skylights. So these were for existing ductwork originally, or existing equipment that came down from the roof. We didn't need to use that for our new systems, and so we added in skylights there to just further provide some daylighting to that space. And then stepping even further back into the studio. So I had mentioned that back in this garage that you see in this back right corner, that sloped down, it sloped down 16 inches from the floor line here. And in looking at the best way to lay this out, we decided that raised floor was going to be the best option for us. It allowed us to not junk up that exposed ceiling with exposed ductwork. It allowed us to get power that would be more flexible within our studio space if we ever did need to reconfigure. And it also allowed us to have some personal air devices at each workstation to provide a little bit more comfort to employees. But this was something that we had to work through to get it passed, and how we were going to treat this step down to, street level on this north side being 16 inches below where the garage door and the entry is up here, over here on the south. And so we did have to kind of plead our case there. And show that it wasn't going to take away from the storefront here, and that we wouldn't have this step up directly at the glazing. So what we did was we pulled that back and created a thoroughfare really around the perimeter of the studio. It also allows for employees to step away and either work remotely and just get a break from their desk, or take a phone call if they need to do that. So it served a great purpose for us in that way, but also gives us access to this is primarily an employee entrance down here. So just another view of that studio, kind of walking you around. We have private offices below the mezzanine and up above the mezzanine, although they're not enclosed offices. We have a kind of an open door policy within our firm, and even within our old space, our partners didn't have doors on their offices. So that was something that they wanted to continue into this new space, and really kind of adds energy within the studio. And then this is as if you were up in the mezzanine looking back down on that studio. So in between all of the workspaces, we have collaboration tables here that are for teams to come and interact, or to lay out plans and redline, or throw some materials together there. You get a really good shot of the exposed structure here. We really didn't do too much to it. We cleaned it up, removed all the cobwebs and that kind of thing, but we really didn't have to do much to the ceiling there. On the east side of the studio, we have just some open space that's used for people to step away and work remotely, kind of just a change of scenery whenever you're just at your desk all day. And this also is the access, the other access up to the mezzanine level here. One thing that our staff wanted that we didn't have in our old space was just a lot of different variations of work styles, because it's proven that it's not always productive for you to be sitting at your desk, with it at just a desk height. Sometimes your body needs movement to just encourage brain, your more active thinking and problem solving. And so we've tried to sprinkle those spaces throughout the building. And then we just never want to waste any amount of space. And so underneath that steel stair, which might have otherwise just been unusable space or enclosed, we tucked in a telephone room that, it's funny because this was a space that wasn't as planned out as the rest of the building, but there is always someone using this space. I would say it's one of the most used spaces in our office. And then back under the mezzanine, we have our restrooms, kind of this retro style that we incorporated there. This was back in the same area where the only existing walls were in the building, and just kind of took advantage of that space. And then this is upstairs on the mezzanine. We had a much shorter head clearance up here, but we made it work. I think we have like 6'5", maybe clear here under the structure. I think our tallest guy, he could walk under it until we carpeted it, and now it just barely brushes his hair. But so it really has nice views though throughout the space. So this is a little bit more of a multi-purpose space that we reused existing furniture from our old space, and but really kind of kept as much of the original as we could. We really wanted to honor the existing materials and just spaces that were there, and then anything new we kind of kept crisp and white and light, and really tried to do a good mix of that modern and preserved material. So upstairs we did have to do overhead mechanical. So we just were able to tuck that as best we could up against walls that we were going to have, and that comes down from above. And we have we found a few little fun surprises while we were going through. There was some existing signage that exists that we kept. Just loved this, use goggles. That's in our garage. And then some of these bus express requirements gave us a pretty good laugh. But originally we were thinking to remove all of that, but we just liked the character that it added to the space. And so this is our new home. This is Polk Stanley Wilcox's new home. I'll say it has really changed our culture. Even we were there for about 6 months before COVID sent everyone home, and even in that short 6 months, it changed our culture. It re-energized our staff. Our staff loved being able to stand up from their desk and talk to coworkers that, you know, they didn't get to see in the old building. The amount of daylight that we are exposed to just is an instant energizer, and people are excited to come to work. And it was just amazing to watch. You know, you do this for clients, but then to experience it is just incredible. And to watch employees just kind of their passion is kind of seems to be re-energized is just been really great for our firm. And you know, with COVID, we're back in the office, but we're not quite back to where we were before COVID. And we're just really excited that hopefully we'll get there soon, and you know, be using our space the way that it was originally intended. So that's our home, and that's the revitalization of Winchester. So, Rachel, I know you were going to save some questions or ask some questions.
Yes, thank you so much for that excellent presentation. We have a couple questions.
Okay.
Your first one, I'll encourage people to still type your questions in the Q&A or into the chat, whichever one. We still have plenty of time for questions with Laura. The first question is from Bart Stafford. Will the pandemic change the way people work in your offices in the future?
Sure. Let me go back to a floor plan. So we did have to make a couple of modifications whenever we did come back. We faced our staff north and south. That was really to encourage collaboration. I sit in this seat, and one of the architects sits here. We're on a project together. We turn around constantly and talk to each other about that specific project. So that was an ideal situation for COVID, but this condition here was not. So what we ended up doing was putting glass partitions in between there. So that didn't block our views. Let me exit out of this full screen and go to that studio. So it didn't block views from back, not directly on the perimeter of the studio, but it kept visibility clear. But it did provide that partition that we needed, you know, sneeze guard for lack of a better word. But we, and the monitors itself, we have rather large monitors that really kind of block that. But between the glass partition and that made our staff feel safe. And so that was a change that we made before we were back in the office full time. But otherwise, that's really kind of the only modification that we've had to make.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Another question. I like the open door and open space concept. Is this a current trend in design or just your firm's philosophy? I have taught in an open space classroom building, so it caught my attention.
I think maybe both. I think it can be used in a lot of different industry types, but I think it definitely depends on the industry and that company's philosophy. It's very much a part of our culture and a part of our philosophy, transparency and just, you know, always being able to approach a partner. That was very important to our partnership. And so, you know, we're of the belief that closed door conversations can happen in a conference room. They don't need to be had in a private office that's directly adjacent to the studio. And so we understand that sensitive conversations do need to happen. You need to have a place for those, but that doesn't necessarily have to be within an office. And that also allows the partners, they can hear what's going on in the studio. It keeps them more engaged with our staff. Even the partners that sit up on the mezzanine, they only have a rail that goes across the back of their office. And in the front of their office, there's no glazing, there's no door. So that keeps them engaged with our staff. I've done that open policy on one other project. But again, it really just depends on your industry type. I would say there are definitely projects that do not need to do that, but I would just ask those questions of the staff or of the company, the people kind of making those decisions. And because it does, I think it creates transparency subconsciously for people within the space.
Okay, from Patricia Blick, is there anything you would change now that you have been in the building?
That's a tough one. There are little nitpicky things that I would do, like in our materials library where we have all of the materials that we may specify on a project. I might have added a little bit more storage or done it in a different way. But overall, those are really kind of the things that I might say, or I might have located the trash can in the break room on one cabinet over. They're very small things that I've thought, or I've had a kind of a thought in the back of my mind about that. But I think overall, we got the space planning right. Those big moves has really worked out for our firm and for our staff and the way that we work.
Well, good. So not many complaints at all.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Or they at least haven't told me. I don't know.
That's great. I'll tell folks you can still type questions if you want to. So I'm going to ask her a couple questions. And I'll also mention that this project was rehabilitated with the help of state and federal historic tax credits.
Yeah.
That's important to note. And also that this project is an Arkansas Preservation Award winning project. From this past January, the Winchester building won the award for Outstanding Achievement in Adaptive Reuse. So great project.
And I will say with those tax credits, I mean, that made it to where we could do this project. That really kind of pushed us into being able to do that. We looked at doing building new building or renovating other buildings for 5+ years before we made this move, and it just never made sense. And being able to do those credits really pushed us into bringing this project to fruition. So.
Well, yay, great. Thank you for saying that. That's good feedback. Patricia says, that's great. We always push for the tax credit angle. Were there aspects that you couldn't do because of the tax credit requirements?
There were a couple of things that we had to redesign, and specifically our HVAC system. Which is a pretty big deal. We had always planned to do the raised floor at level 1, but the way that we were feeding that down from the roof, we originally wanted to do kind of a doghouse on top of the roof, and we had kept that as low as we could, but it was ultimately decided that was too obtrusive to the original character of the building. And we fought that fight pretty hard, but just couldn't make our case on that. And it actually, that has caused us some problems. We've had some leaks there. We don't have them with the 70-year-old skylights, but we have them with the new penetrations with the equipment on the roof. So that was one of the things that a battle that we fought and we lost. Like I mentioned before, we really had to make our case about the raised floor in the studio space not butting up against the glazing here and not changing that perspective from the outside. We really didn't even try the garage door. That was going to be a big issue if we replaced that. So we really kind of decided, we like the character of it. We're going to keep that. And so the refurbishment of that, those were kind of the big items on the exterior. The glass block, we have had a couple of glass blocks broken through on one side. So if they get broken through on the other side, we're going to have to replace a few of those. But those were kind of the biggest milestones. It was really that doghouse on the top that was the biggest one.
Okay. Now, this is not related to this project,
Okay.
but if someone wanted to refresh their interior space on a budget, are there any kind of general recommendations that you would make as an interior designer?
Yeah, I think you can do a lot with paint. And I will say that I feel like even within our own space, we did a lot with paint. There wasn't a lot of color except for in a few various areas. But you can really find ways to do creative things with paint. And we've done that on a lot of projects where we've done less expensive flooring just with LVT or carpet, and reused existing furniture and found a color palette that worked. And I'll go back to one of the first slides. This project here in the top center is a perfect example of how you can do a lot with not a large budget. This is literally splatter paint. We chose their brand colors, and we worked with the painter to develop that and use perforated metal panel. And there are ways that you can be creative. I find I think our design staff prides itself on doing a lot with not a lot of money. You don't have to use high-end materials to make a fantastic space. And so just kind of trying to think outside of the box for those basic materials and how can you use those in interesting ways.
Okay, I like that. I need you to come and tell me what to do with the paint. Okay, Patricia has another one. You all have revitalized an important corner building. Are you seeing any interest in redevelopment around you? Maybe timing is bad with COVID, but would like to see some activity.
Yeah, Rachel and I were talking about this earlier, that I do think we've seen a slowdown in what the potential growth of that area would have been. You can never know what would have happened had COVID not happened, to see, what that neighborhood would have done. I know that we're adding a little bit more life to it, at least with, we try to walk to restaurants as much as we can. We have some staff that just get out and take an afternoon walk to just kind of, re-energize. But personally, I haven't seen much development around that block. One day, once COVID has passed us and everyone's comfortable, we would love to do some block parties and encourage that kind of interaction and sense of community. But like you said, COVID has kind of stopped a lot of that right now.
Okay, the last question I have for you is, what's your favorite thing about your job?
I really like that I get to work with. I love my coworkers. I love getting to work with them every single day. They just make it so much fun. I love the clients that we have. I love learning about their industry and problem solving. you know, an issue that they have, and how can something that I do make their life easier. That is one of the funnest and maybe most rewarding parts of my job. You know, the picture at the end, that's a moment in time. And so, you know, really kind of seeing how you can change someone's moment in their day job, or, you know, create moments that just help them get through the day. That's what makes me keep doing this. Providing spaces that maybe someone doesn't realize that we've affected their mood by them walking into this space, but we have, by everything that we've done around them. That just really, you know, gets me excited about a project and a material, you know. So
that's a great answer. Thank you again so much for this excellent program. And I have just a couple slides to show at the end. Let's see here. I can get, there we go. There, I think I'm sharing. Can you see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Technical difficulties. Okay. Please join us on November 9th at 3:30 for our next Women in Preservation program. We will have another interior designer, Claudia Shannon, will be our presenter of Jonesboro. And as always, I'll remind you to please follow Preserve Arkansas on social media. Go to our website at preservearkansas.org to learn more about what we do and to become a member by supporting us year-round. Thank you all. Have a good afternoon.